Here's Parks Associates' SmartTechCheck podcast with Mark Vena.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Vena, leader of Parks Associates Smart Home Research Practice, and welcome to the SmartTechCheck podcast, where we cover all consumer tech topics that are smart home, home automation, security and console gaming related, and much, much more. Today is Wednesday, September 15th, 2021. It was a big week. It was a big 24-hour period in the consumer tech space as Apple announced a whole bunch of big new things that we're going to discuss exclusively on today's podcast. And we've got my usual roster of partners in crime in the tech journalism field. We've got John Quain, who writes for the New York Times and Tom's Guide, the irrepressible Stewart Wolpin, who writes for Twice and Techlicious, and coming back from a number of vacations, because he doesn't really have enough time for us, but I really do appreciate it, Rob. Rob Pegoraro, who writes for
time period.
Rob Pegoraro, who writes for USA Today, Fast Company, and Wirecutter, and just is an overall great guy. And we appreciate him, taking time out of his precious schedule to be here today. But gentlemen, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Mark.
And we don't see John. John is calling back in right now as we speak. There's John.
There he is.
John, we thought you went to a bar. We just went for a drink. So again, yesterday was a big announcement in Apple land. I wrote a column about it in Forbes this morning, and I don't think it was. I kind of rated it as a 4.5 on the technology Richter scale. If you live in California, that doesn't even rattle the windows a little bit. But we're going to go through that in a little bit of detail. But before we bring up the topic slides, Stewart, let me get your 30 seconds reaction of the event itself. You don't seem to be shuddering like, oh my God, I can't believe what Apple announced. So you look like you were fairly nonplussed.
Well, I mean, the rumor mill had been pretty active before this, so there really were very few surprises. And the fact is that all of these announcements from all of these companies have gotten so insanely grandiose that it's so difficult to cut through all the drone video and computer graphics. And it's like, all we want to know is what's in the phone and whether or not there's enough in it that would make me want to upgrade. So I'm getting a little sick and tired that all of these tech companies are playing, can you top this? And I just long for the days where Steve Jobs came out in a black turtleneck, held up the phone, did some live demos on stage, and we were done. It's just getting just so too much. Now, as for the product itself, I was disappointed in two things.
Well, we'll get into that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. You always want to jump the gun, but I'll make sure the Apple marketing department you just want them to send you a press release, essentially. But that's okay.
And a phone, of course. But I'll take a press release.
John, your 30 seconds before we dive into the topics. John, I think John may have frozen.
He's rebooting.
So while he's rebooting, let's flip over to Rob. Rob, what was your 30 seconds?
Yeah, so confirm what we've known for a while is that the smartphone is a fairly mature product category, just like all of us, I guess. So of course there wasn't going to be anything that revolutionary. I was a little surprised to see that much attention paid to the iPad, which I honestly thought we'd wait another month for news about that. And I was also surprised to see so much less hype about 5G. Perhaps Apple realized from last year that giving over half the sales pitch to Verizon talking about millimeter wave 5G that basically no one can use in practice for any great length of time was not effective.
Hindsight's always 20/20. So anyway, let's bring up the first slide. And John, do we have you back? Nod your head, John, if you're there. John is there.
If you're under duress.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm here.
like it's a haunted video. Anyway, want to bring up this Park Associates factoid of the week. I sent you guys this slide a little bit later. This is some data that we announced early in the year, and it kind of just demonstrates, Apple really does have a piece of a lot of families' technology budget and the presence in their home. So, is there any data on the slide that surprises you? Let me start with Stewart. Does this surprise you at all, Stewart?
I was surprised that the HomePod is doing so poorly. I'm not surprised really by any of this. I had sort of sensed everything that you're showing on this. I was just a little surprised, especially with the $99 HomePod, that it might be more than Apple TV actually. But this indicates less about Apple and more about the brand space that Amazon has in the smart speaker market, that it even can't get broken through to Apple fans. So the fact that Apple is suffering so poorly behind Amazon on the smart speaker side caught me a little by surprise.
Well, and keep in mind, this is 1Q21 data, so probably a good portion of this, because it's both HomePod, they're more of the original, very expensive model, and that new $99 model they came. And so there's probably, 2 or 3 months of sales out, I imagine, in that. So yeah, it's not surprising, frankly. We were talking about this before the call, and that while their share is relatively small, when you factor in the ASPs and number, when you talk about 5 or 6% of that market, because the market is so big, it's a fairly sizable number from a revenue standpoint. It's not, a lot of companies would love to have that kind of revenue stream that they do. But let me flip this over to Rob. Rob, your reaction to this slide in any way?
So I was going to say, I'm surprised the Apple TV is doing that badly. It makes me think the HomePod is doing quite well considering its novelty. What I would want to see after that, I guess, can't be reflected because this is an Apple hardware, an Apple devices chart. How many people have Apple TV in the sense the connected TV they bought includes software for that? So therefore they can, watch everything on Apple TV Plus, AirPlay stuff from an iPad or an iPhone to that TV without buying the Apple TV box itself.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And, keep in mind that to experience all the wonderful things that Apple TV facilitates, you don't necessarily have to have an Apple TV. You can use AirPlay and other ways to consume Apple TV content without having that device. But the big hitter in the streaming category, as you know, is really Roku. They're really the dominant player, followed very close, not very closely, but followed by Amazon with their Fire TV stick and other devices like that. You probably saw the announcement a couple of weeks ago that TCL now is partnering with Amazon for Amazon TVs, which is kind of going to be interesting. John, your reaction?
I was surprised that they're, Apple TV and the HomePod are doing as well as they are doing. I mean, no one uses, the Siri at home. I mean, it's all, I can't even say her name because there's so many of them around my own environs. They're in cars, they're in, in your tap, in your kitchen, and the shower head in your bathroom. That's just not a market that Apple is ever gonna, and they don't have a store. So they,
right.
Where we buy all our stuff. So therefore that HomePod is just not, I mean, they have to have the product there, but it's never going to be anything
right.
significant, I don't think, anyway. So I'm surprised it was there. And the Apple TV was kind of fun because they want to be cool. So it's the very first thing that Tim said was, all the stuff's going to be on Apple TV. We are really cool and stuff. And then I was like, actually, there's only one show I'm interested in. And he mentioned it at the end, so it was like, not so much.
Well, I don't want to go back to the way I opened the podcast, but what I thought was interesting was that he spent the first 3 or 4 minutes defending why the event was called California Streaming, and it almost sounded like the governor of California, who did emerge victorious yesterday. It sounded like, hey, Tim, could you put a plug in for the state of California? Please do me, because he's pretty much, we're not leaving California. If anybody thinks that we're ever going to leave California, we're not going to leave California.
Right.
Let it flip to the first topic here, because I know Stewart is chomping at the bit. What jumped at you, Stewart, from an iPhone 13 standpoint? Was it kind of just rinse and repeat stuff, or did anything jump out? Are you going to, now that these have high refresh screens, which is, Apple's, it's kind of late to the party in that regard. Did anything blow you away?
A couple of things pro, a couple of things con. As we are all international travelers, the international 5G expansion, I think, at least for the Jet set, is important. The fact that they are bringing OLED to the lower models or to the entry level models, I can't tell you how often my wife has to use my phone when we're out because her LCD screen simply can't stand up to the sunlight. The additional battery life is, I think, the number one important thing. The longer battery life that any of these devices get, the better for everybody. And the fact that you can get 1 terabit of storage, because if people are going to start shooting a lot more 4K, I think that extra memory is important. And that brings me to, I think, is the most interesting thing they introduced, which I don't think anybody had anticipated, was the cinema mode. That rack focus feature looks damned cool. And I have a feeling that a lot of videographers and TikTokers are really going to put that to use. There were a couple of things, as I mentioned before, that I was very disappointed at. The first one, that they did not return Touch ID to the phone. I think this is just negligence on their part, considering that we're still all wearing masks outside. And to have to continually, and to force us to buy an Apple Watch to unlock our phone, which, by the way, does not work all the time or even half the time. They put the Touch ID on the new iPad Mini. Why couldn't they have just added it to the 13? I'm just stunned by this. The other thing that I was disappointed at, and I'm going to have to refresh my own memory here because I wrote it down and then quickly forgot. No USB-C. Again, they're adding USB-C to the MacBooks. They're adding them to the iPads. Let's lose the lightning. Can we just use one damned cable to connect everything already?
That should be one of your tweets. Can't we just lose that damn lightning at that?
Do we not have to buy these sort of things all the time?
Right.
Yeah, that's a very handy accessory. I have.
Yeah, I got one of them too.
Bit of trade show swag.
But I want to seize on one little thing, is that when you think about this, let's step back at this. A 1 terabyte storage option on a smartphone. I mean, that to me is, it's hard for me to wrap my head around that. I mean, there are people still walking around with laptops that have 256 gig, maybe 512 gig, and by the way, flash storage, it's solid state storage. But to your point, Stewart, they're continuing to position the Pro brand as really a computational photography device. They really want to blow up, DSLRs. And when you have two Hollywood directors, they had Catherine Bigelow and they had that other.
And camcorders, not just DSLR, but camcorders.
Yeah, camcorders. I mean, she made a statement, if you recall, while she was doing that little demo, where she's like, by the way, not only does it have this cinematic mode, which is really great, that allows us to shoot stuff, that, a several $100,000 camera was required to shoot that before. She said, if you were listening to it very carefully, oh, by the way, we're not using any ancillary equipment, which I interpreted that as like lighting equipment, which is pretty unbelievable, And I mean, it's great for those budding Steven Spielbergs, but
it's not great for all the key groups in Hollywood.
That's good old Rob, looking at it from a labor force standpoint. Rob, don't ever stop. But Rob, what was your thoughts on the announcement on the iPhone portion?
So, similar to Stewart, I'm having a hard time figuring out where Apple is going in certain design directions. We know that they've decided that Touch ID is good on the iPad Mini, and for that matter, on the iPad that they just refreshed. But it's bad on the iPhone, except for the iPhone SE, which continues. USB-C is the future of the iPad, except for the cheap iPad. It's the future of their laptops, but the iPhone is still Lightning. If you have a device with a USB-C plug, it can't have a headphone jack if it's a tablet, but it can if it's a laptop. It can have a headphone jack that has a lightning cable and it's a cheap iPad, but it can't if it has a lightning cable and it's a phone. What is the flow chart here? What is where are you going with this, man?
Well, here's the funny thing, Rob, and all you guys know this. You know that Apple is notoriously secret about a lot of their product information, obviously publicly, but even within the confines of Apple, many of the product groups don't talk to each other. And I don't know if I have to believe them, like any corporation, there has to be some type of umbrella technology committee to make sure little things like that, which apparently maybe they missed the meeting, who knows? But it's
people are at 3 o'clock on the Spaceship Circle campus. The other ones are at 9 o'clock, and they just don't meet that often to lunch anymore.
No, it's just odd that this whole USB-C Lightning, is it here, is it there? And including the Touch ID topic that you raised. John, what's your insight on the Apple iPhone announcement yesterday? John,
I did like the cinema mode. I mean, a lot of the features that cinema mode, to me, I shoot a lot of video, so that seemed like a really attractive thing. And there are other elements of it too, not just the rack focus, which was a little rough if you looked at it closely, but there are other features that I think will be really handy for shooting video. That was the big thing for me. We'd like more battery life, a lot more, but still, something is better than nothing.
John, do you really think that they're, and this is going to sound like a silly question, but since you look at this space very closely, do you think there are people going out and buying high-end iPhone? They've been doing this computational photography thing for several generations now. It's not like this is the first phone that has kind of dipped its toe in that area. But do you think there are folks out there that are actually buying smartphones specifically to replace a high-end camcorder or a high-end camera? Not to augment what they have, but to replace it?
No, not if you're shooting video for broadcast or something. But if you're an influencer, and that's a pretty big market.
Yeah.
People shooting YouTube videos and TikTok videos, then yeah, that is the model you buy. You don't buy the base iPhone. You go for the high end one that has all the video components in it, and some of the have some work to do there, but
it looks like we may have to get John a deal with Comcast or someone who's ever doing his.
A few hundred more Starlink satellites.
That'll be the next podcast. Let's flip to the next topic, Haley, if you don't mind. And Rob, you wrote a great article about this morning, which yours truly quoted. There's my shameless self promotion, but it was a terrific article on all these deals that naturally are coming out after a major iPhone release and things that consumers should be aware of. So I'm going to flip this over to you because it was a terrific piece.
Thanks. Yeah, it involved math, and so I should know we have to run a couple corrections since there were little quirks. Apple actually had the wrong information about Verizon's promotion on their site. They're working to fix that, we're told. But yeah, basically the wireless carriers are all really thirsty for your business to the extent where AT&T will give you a new iPhone 13 Pro for free. Weirdly enough, the plain old iPhone 13, don't call it the iPhone 13 Amateur, that you still have to pay all $100 out of pocket. And the trade-in values are really good, not just if you're, the sort of obsessive compulsive phone upgrader who shows up with an 11-month-old iPhone 12 and wants to get a new one. You could trade in an iPhone 11 from 2 years ago.
Right.
And you still get good values and stuff even older than that. T-Mobile has a forever upgrade, which sounds great, $100 in upgrade credits every 2 years, but you got to sign up for the Magenta Max plan, which is the one that's $15 more than the regular one. Has a lot of stuff you might need, but most people probably don't. Verizon, similar deal where you can get the new iPhone 13 basically for free with trade-in. The catch with all these, you'd think, okay, there's no contracts, I'm all good. But when you look at it, essentially what you're getting is 2 years, or in AT&T's case, 3 years of bill credits. And if you want to leave, if you decide that you want to switch carriers, then you got to pay back the credits that you haven't gotten yet. And the catch, which I got to credit Mark for calling this out, some of the most popular wireless services these days are from the cable companies.
Yes.
The one service like Comcast and Spectrum have that people love, where they're reselling Verizon capacity at very good deals, but either you have to get their internet service in Spectrum's case, or in Comcast's case, to get the advertised rate, you have to be a Comcast internet subscriber. Otherwise, it's $10 a month more. And of course, Comcast and Spectrum may be gigantic cable companies. They don't.
But they're not everywhere. Not everywhere.
And so, if you move, a year from now, then either you got to close out that contract somehow, or you're paying $10 a month more. And in a weird way, it's a flashback to when you had regional carriers back when Verizon was Bell Atlantic Mobile, and they had a separate roaming rate for outside their service area, the Midwest and the West Coast versus their East Coast confines. That's a whole nother thing to contemplate. And, if we mentioned the jet set, if you want a phone that you can just, in fact, pop in a prepaid SIM when you get off the plane somewhere else, Verizon is still good because they don't lock their phones. But with T-Mobile and AT&T, they are locked until you pay them off. So something to consider, it might tip you towards just buying the phone from Apple, which has its own installment payment plan that doesn't lock the phone to a particular carrier.
Before we flip to the next topic, because I want to get to the iPads and to the smartwatches, the Apple Watch stuff. Stuart and John, do those type of offers motivate you individually? Like when you're upgrading phones?
Well, I can't speak for John, but obviously, some of us have to upgrade just so we can write about it. But I read Rob's piece. Excellent job as always. And I also got an email from my own carrier, who shall remain unmentioned. It was T-Mobile. I was reminded, I had this flashback to Monty Python and the Meaning of Life. In the scene in the classroom where the kids are being given instruction about where to hang their clothes, on which peg, and when to write their letter home, and if they're getting a visit from their brother, and these ridiculous, and I'm looking through this email, I'm going, I have no idea whether or not I'm eligible for any of these things. The number of caveats and ifs and conditions, just I'm staring at it. I'm going, this was written by John Cleese. This is the only thing that makes any sense to me. Just tell me what I get if I own this phone. Just tell me that. I
love the life of
paragraphs of caveats and orders.
My reference would be that scene in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory when the kids are getting they're being admitted into the factory, and Willy Wonka shows them that long contract. They have to sign, and the words, get down to like 2-point font size. But no, you're right. You're right. Let the buyer beware. John, do you get influenced by those deals, or not really?
Not really. I didn't see anything that would really make me jump at it. I didn't. And also, number 13, maybe I'll wait for number 14. Just a little superstitious.
Let us flip to the next topic here. And that is the Series 7 watch. And what to me was interesting about it, well, first of all, back to Stuart, your point is that, it obviously doesn't have a USB-C interface, but they're changing the charging cable to a USB-C interface, the cable itself, which obviously is more efficient from a charging standpoint. Why they're not doing that with the iPhones, who knows? But that's the way they're claiming. Well, you can charge the watch faster without changing the electronics of the watch itself. But I do think it was interesting that they're getting to a bit of a larger display, which I think is going to appeal. We have Parks Associates has research that shows that, smartwatches and fall down notification and remote monitoring are really huge features that attract caregivers and family members who want to give their elderly parents a device to, keep tabs on them. And I think a bigger screen obviously is going to make those products a little bit more appealing for elderly folks who may be a little bit, paranoid about, looking at things on a small type of screen. But any reaction, Stuart, on your side to the Series 7 watch? Are you going to go out and buy one, or are you waiting?
I haven't decided yet. I've got a Series 3, and it's working just fine. But that's always the problem with these things. You've got something that is good enough, and for most people, good enough is
good enough.
Good enough.
Yeah.
The couple of things, the battery life obviously is a very big thing. I was having a conversation with another tech writer, and we were talking about the fact that it's finally going to have sleep tracking in it and enough battery life to last not only all through the day, but all through the night as well, and then quick charging and get you started. But my question is, who wears their watch when they're sleeping? And if it's going to be bigger, that's just going to make it more uncomfortable. So I'm not sure. I need to actually see it on my wrist next to the Series 3 to see whether or not I need a bigger watch.
Let me just stop you and I know this is going to sound crazy because I live out in California, at least for the time being. The reason why I do wear the watch when I'm sleeping, putting the battery issue aside, I always have this paranoia that if there's an earthquake in Northern California, which could happen, as you know, the idea of having because I don't think you'd have the frame of mind to go look for your smartphone when things start to shake and collapse. So I think if I had a watch on, I have the cellular plan, at least I'll be able to find my body in the rubble after the.
That is very paranoid.
Yeah, I call the earthquake
morbidly paranoid.
The earthquake usage model, and I'm now sure that thousands of people are going to buy one just for that. John, your thoughts on the watch?
It's still not attractive to me. I'm more of a big, manly men watch sort of thing, and that design is just like an iPhone on your wrist. It's just never grabbed me. So until they come up with something different, I'm not one of the people that's going to jump on it. I do think the bigger screen is a good idea. I think it makes it more legible for a lot of people, and you can do a little bit more on it. So I think that is actually helpful.
Yep. And Rob, now you don't have an iPhone, right? You're not an iPhone.
No, I was going to say I was completely unpersuaded by the sales pitch because I have an Android phone. My Pixel 3a has been aging gracefully. And yeah, I don't want to go back to having a separate charging cable for my phone, like some kind of animal. I keep my foot in the iOS universe with my iPad, which we can talk about next.
Right.
As far as the Apple Watch, same thing. Because I don't have an iPhone, that's just not of interest to me. I am interested to the extent that people do choose smartphone platforms by their companion smartwatch platforms, because now Android Wear is actually relevant because Google decided we can't wait for Qualcomm to decide they care about doing processors and chipsets for smartwatches. So they teamed up with Samsung. Apparently they do have a good smartwatch there, although you get the best features in the software with a Samsung Galaxy phone. And so now it won't be, there's the Apple Watch and there's all these crummy, obsolete Android watches on this other side of the market. There'll be a little more competition. So, but then again, maybe no one actually cares. Like I wish that that chart at the start had included Apple Watches, not just iPhones, iPads, computers.
Well, interesting, as you know, Apple, the watch category, Apple really is the dominant player. I mean, they have, I want to say they have upwards of 80 to 90% share in the smartwatch category.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. So, but now what's interesting, and then I want to flip to the last topic and talk about the iPad minis, because there was some news made there, is the fact that you have kids. You're not attracted to the idea of giving your kids a watch that you can kind of keep tabs on them, and they can kind of know where they are. I mean, that to me is an interesting usage model.
I want to see how ruggedized it was. Given that her kids documented ability to, like, I saw what her school issued iPad looked like after a year and a half.
And there are far less expensive alternatives for tracking your kids. I mean, there are plenty of companies who make kid tracking, bracelets. So to get an Apple Watch to track your kid, that's really overkill.
The key thing would actually be to, get her out of the house. So if you could actually play Minecraft or Roblox on the watch, that might be something.
On that note, let's flip to the last topic here. And the iPad, there was some big news there, and I wrote about it this morning.
Look at this. Now it's obsolete. So sad.
Yeah, well, the thing is that for a while, Apple has ignored the Mini for quite a bit of time. They did refresh it about a year and a half ago, but from a performance standpoint, it's always been kind of the runt of the family, to use that kind of analogy. And now it's got pen support. They're using the same ASIC that they're using in the iPhone, the 13, which is a very powerful solution. And it sounds like Apple's now coming to the conclusion that form factor does have very strong usage possibilities with content creators. Even though the form factor is relatively small. And I can tell you, just based on personal experience, elderly folks love the iPad Mini, just for email, because it's small. They can, it's the large iPad Pros are almost too enormous, for many people. But let me start with John. John, were you surprised that they're kind of rejuvenating the iPad Mini in many respects?
I was, but I'm also happy about it. I thought that was the best product out of all the things that they talked about. The strongest one. I think it's the right form factor. It's sort of the Goldilocks of the form factors. It's great for consuming media. It's just about the right size. It's not too big. I know people take them to bed and stream their latest sitcoms and stuff. They do that. I think it's a perfect form factor. So to improve it, to boost it, to give it all those features again, I thought was a great idea. And that I thought was a winner out of the package.
Rob?
Yeah, this is where Apple will get my money soon enough. Because, I have the iPad Mini 5, bought this in April or May of 2019. And it's aged really well. I mean, much better than most other devices I have. But yeah, we've got something that the screen is larger. I can actually charge it with the same cable that charges my phone and my laptop, which is very exciting. Downside is, of course, now I'm going to have to enjoy the dongle lifestyle since the new thing doesn't have a headphone jack for whatever reason. Right. But yeah, I mean, I've liked the iPad Mini. That was bought, I guess, when it first came out in 2012, which remember was not that long after Steve Jobs went on an analyst earnings call to say no one wants a tablet that small. You'd have to file your fingers down to use the screen. When obviously they were working on it in some corner of the Cupertino campus. So yeah, the fact that headphone jack aside, it's got USB-C. It has Touch ID, so you've got that bigger screen, but you're not stuck having to take off a mask to unlock it. That's good. I would like to see the iPhone get more like that.
Well, and being the fantastic journalist that you are, I mean, I'm sure you're going to go out and spend another $100. I think it's $100, $150 for the pencil, and you'll be taking notes on it all the time.
I might. We'll see. Honestly, the only time I'm actually most of my taking notes is typing. I do occasionally. I did just sign some DocuSign form on the screen of this thing, but my signature looks like a scribble anyways. It's a little Nike swoosh.
Here, let's end with your 2 cents on the iPad Mini.
I thought it was interesting that it looked as if Apple was targeting it more at the commercial industrial market, hospitals, airlines, things of that, inventory control in warehouses. That's what it looked like that they were targeting it. And the fact that there also might be an ancillary consumer market is, I think, gravy for them, because I think their bigger market for this is going to be the industrial, for workers who are wandering around places who need to access a custom device for that institution. The fact that it's 5G almost makes it an 8.3-inch iPhone, and it's only $500 for that.
Although so, millimeter wave.
And I think for the growing number of portable gamers, the number of portable people who watch movies were on the go, where the iPhone, they didn't increase the size. So essentially, even though it's technically not a phone with 5G connectivity, if you're wearing headphones, an 8.3-inch screen, it really does hit that middle, and hopefully it'll still fit in your pocket. It really does hit a sweet spot for a large constituency that I don't think Apple has really addressed before.
Well, I think it's pretty clear now, though. They're committed to this category. I mean, I don't think the iPad Mini is ever going to go away now. And by the way, what we also forgot, they added 5G.
That's what I mentioned, that it's a 5G. Also, it almost makes it an iPhone for $500, right, as long as you're wearing earphones to communicate by it.
Well, and now the Yankees
coming in.
and Stewart, now the Yankees could use that in the dugout to send signals to the batters,
and maybe keep it away from the umpire so they can't see because it's small enough.
They don't have to whistle, and I still don't like
a trash can too.
Yeah, exactly. I still don't like Lindor, and that's a different podcast. But listen, guys, this was a great podcast. So listen, thanks for your time. Thanks, John, Stewart, and Rob. Thanks for taking the time to join me for the great podcast. For our viewing and listening audience, please make sure that you hit the like and subscribe buttons on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Please visit Parks Associates at www.parksassociates.com. And until next time, have a great week.